Welcome back to the Story of Liberty. This is John Bona. For the past several years, hardly a day goes by when we have not heard something in the media about religion and politics. And this has been going on for a while. Christians have become more interested in politics, but the statistics still show that only about 50% of Christians in America are registered to vote. And only 50% of them actually vote. Now, if that's true in the final analysis, only 1 out of 4 Christians vote. Did you hear that? 1 out of 4 Christians vote.
Now, 80% of the people in America claim to be Christian. Okay, so 8 out of 10 people in America are professing Christians.
And then we wonder why bad things are happening in America. Prayer taken out of schools, scriptures cannot be read in the public schools. And these things were done in the public schools in America for 350 years prior to their removal. Abortion is legal in America ultimately because Christians have failed to vote. Think about it. Voters ultimately determine who comprise the courts. Because voters elect the president and the Senate, and the executive office appoints the Supreme Court and federal judiciary. The Senate approves it. See, the problem is the Christians have failed to even take an hour, 1 hour out of every 4-year period to vote. Do you know that's 1 hour out of 35,000 hours? Think that level of apathy. Because the taxpayers are funding Planned Parenthood that some elected officials support, and they're celebrating their secular, humanistic religion. By the way, that is the same secular, humanist religion that replaces God with man. And then man's ideas like abortion become his ethics and morality. We need to remember that inevitably, that every time any piece of legislation is passed, it's always an imposition of someone's morality on other people. The secularist, the humanist would seem to suppose that Christians are ignorant, that we're not aware of this fact. Therefore, we're not to do it. We're to sit back and do nothing while they're very busy and engaged in precisely doing what they prohibit us to do. For example, when a law is passed against stealing, the morality of the honest is imposed on the dishonest. When we pass laws against murder, we're imposing the morality of those who have a high view of life on those who do not. So what's happening today is that the secularists and the humanists, they're trying to push Christianity off the playing field and replace it with their agenda of death and immorality. And they have succeeded in doing this about 50% of the time. Well, this is a far cry from what our great founders believed. Let me read you what John Quincy Adams said. He summed up the issue by saying this at the time of the Revolution. He said the highest glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. Well, we know the false religion of secular humanism has declared a full-scale war on the Christian faith in America. They've been successful in taking away religious liberty, even to say a prayer at a high school graduation, and place a cross at a loved one's gravesite in a cemetery. So we have this new morality that includes abortion, infanticide, homosexuality, divorce, pornography, gay marriage, and on, because Christians will not vote. They don't care. Someone said to a Christian a number of years ago, He said, "The problem of our nation today is ignorance and apathy. Don't you agree?" The Christian replied, "I don't know and I don't care." And so in 2012, like past elections, the Christian is not taking advantage of this great privilege we still have in America to vote. And vote in private. It's between you and God. No one knows how you're casting your private vote. But let me say, for the Christian, it's not only a great privilege in this nation to vote, it's a duty. It's a duty to vote in order to share our Christian values and preserve our liberty, to restore the moral fabric of our nation. Just think of it, if Christians voted, then the candidates they elected would share their beliefs and values. America would be a much better place than it is right now, and religious, political, and economic liberty would be lived out in our cities and towns. Christians are to vote for those most likely to govern according to God's stated laws and principles. We're not casting our vote so much with the persons whose theology we like most. I remember back in 1980, the voters had two choices. One was a divorced movie actor who did not attend church on a regular basis. He wasn't on good terms with his children either. His name was Ronald Reagan. His opponent, Jimmy Carter, was a Southern Baptist who was married one time, and his professing faith was at the core of his public identity. I remember this clearly because my dad was a Democrat back when the Democratic Party was different. He debated Jimmy Carter. My dad, he proposed a balanced budget amendment in 1972 and 1976 when our deficit was a small fraction of what it is today. He understood just weights and measures. And by today's standards, he'd be considered a conservative independent. He was pro-life. He was for the God-ordained family, marriage between a man and a woman. He was for smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation over business. And yes, Christian education in public schools was a hallmark of his platform. He loved the idea of Bible reading and prayer in schools. You know, he was an Air Force pilot too, and he defended our nation. He was for a strong national defense, but he was against the war in Vietnam, and for that reason, I guess he was considered a liberal. But that, my friend, shows how far politics has drifted, how far we have drifted and parted from our core moral values. Well, Christians are to vote. We have a duty to vote. It's not just a privilege for Christians. I would say this to you, it's a sin not to vote. Now, you may be surprised to hear that, and ask, where does it say in the Bible that it's a sin not to vote? Well, Christ the Lord said in Mark 12:17, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." This means that we are to render unto the government whatever it is our proper responsibility as citizens of that government to render. Now, for sure in America, that would include at a minimum the fact that we should vote. What is a sin? Well, a sin is any failure to obey a commandment given by God. It's not whatever you or I think it is, what we would like to think it is. It's a disobedience to the commandments of God, His higher law. When we break that, that's a sin. You know, it's my prayer, and I'm sure the prayer of many of you, that like you, I hope the day will come when Christians will look upon their apathy, look back concerning their responsibility to vote in this great nation, this privilege we have to vote. And it's a duty, as I said, for a Christian. And they would be ashamed to admit that they have failed to live up to this duty. Get out there, vote. It's a great privilege. And for you, the Christian, it's a responsibility. It's a duty. It's between you and God.